Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 4th Annual Galluccio Associates Youth Sports Recognition Volunteer Breakfast. At this time, on behalf of Galluccio Associates, we are proud and honored once again to have the Boston Bruins' own Rene Rancourt here to start our program by singing the national anthem. Mr. Rene Rancourt.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I ask you to rise. Ladies and gentlemen, if you know the words, please don't sing. Except for this guy right here. What's his name?
Robbie Cleary.
Robbie Cleary. You can sing very clearly. Thank you, okay? Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Play ball! Oh, yes. Woo. Oh, boy, I feel like running for mayor. Unbelievable.
Thank you, Rene. The Boston Bruins are back, but Rene, you've been there all along, buddy. Our most reliable host every year, Rene Rancourt. At this time, if we could just quiet down for a moment. As it's custom here, we'd like to offer a moment of silence for members of the youth sports community and members of our community who have been supportive and contributors of youth sports who have passed away over the last year. And I'd like to offer a moment of silence at this time for one of the recipients in the first annual Galluccio Associates Breakfast, who was the first female president of Little League in the city from North Cambridge, Diane Costanza, Peter Pirro of Somerville, who was a great contributor to youth sports in Somerville, Mass. Henry F. Owens, who was known as one of the first successful minority-owned business owners in New England. But what people didn't recall, especially my generation, was Henry was the New England Gold Gloves boxing champion. He was a three-sport athlete, and he was an athletic hero and a great supporter of youth sports throughout his life. And close friend of mine, and a terrible loss this year, of Sharif Mustafa, who was a 21-year-old BC student, a golf player, and a hockey player at Cambridge Ringe and Latin, who's someone who, to me, embodies what it is to fight back, to gain access to better education, and continue to strive to better his life. And our thoughts and prayers are especially with the Mustafa family at this time. And if we could have a moment of silence. Thank you. We have a new addition to the program this year. As you'll see in the program, it says that the welcome is by Anthony Galluccio, the president of Galluccio Associates. But this year, since there is at least one more charismatic speaker in this city than any of the people up here at the head table, including myself, and someone who has been a huge supporter and a real backbone to youth sports, and to the students at Cambridge Ringe and Latin, including myself, and to many of the people sitting out there, I'd like to have at this time George Greenwich come up with a 2-minute Welcome from George Greenwich, my coach.
I want to thank you for inviting me to be able to give these opening remarks. Willie McGinnis. I don't know if you've ever been to Cambridge before, but we'd like to call this as like our town meeting. This is a good time when all the people in the city of Cambridge come together to recognize all the accomplishments of our youth and our coaches and our volunteers. We'd like to thank you, teachers, faculty. Listen, you know what's very important? We don't recognize enough the Cambridge Recreation Department and also the Public Works for taking care of our fields. The most important thing I'd like to say to the parents, and especially to the youth out there, through you, we wish that you have determination, courage, and persistence in these days. God love you. You are our backbone. You are our future. Please keep it going. Thank you very much.
At this time, we are about to give away the 1999 Special Recognition Awards. And first, let me just say a few words. This breakfast is about youth sports volunteers, and people know that. It's important for me at this time to let you know that over the past several years, people like you, the people who have come out to support Galluccio Associates, have enabled Galluccio Associates to become what I believe to be as a key player in the sports community in Cambridge. And throughout the year, the money that gets raised through the help of people like you, we are able to help youth sports organizations and individual participants who need money for funding, who can't afford registration fees or a pair of cleats, for fledgling organizations, which I think is very important. When we started, organizations like Metro Plus, AAU basketball, the Girls Light League, the Cambridge Pop Warner football, before they could get established for funding through the city, through traditional funding measures through the city of Cambridge, they come to organizations like Galluccio Associates, and we were able to step forward. We plan on doing the same thing. We were there for girls softball. The rowing program is now starting at the high school. But those are the organizations, when they get started, when they're trying to make a sales pitch for their organization, like, believe it or not, Pop Warner football or girls softball. There was a time when people didn't believe that those organizations would fly. Now we look at hundreds of young people throughout the city that are involved, making friendship, building values, building character throughout this city. And those are the types of leads that Galluccio Associates is able to take because of the help that you give us. And I'd like everyone to take a look when you get a chance at the program to see where the contributions and support goes to. And I think you'll be very pleased with what you see. At this time, I'd like to begin the Special Recognition Awards. The first two 1999 Special Recognition Awards go to two people who I think embody what it is to succeed, to overcome adversity in their community. Both Bill Ewing and Jim Edghill grew up here. Both Bill Ewing and Jim Edghill faced hardship in this city, rose to overcome that hardship, and go on to be role models. Both of them left Cambridge. Billy Ewing went on to Tufts. Jim Edghill went to Salem State. Both were All-American basketball players at those universities, and both went on to get their college degrees. Both are going on to successful professional careers. But most importantly, and the reason why they're here today, is because both of them stopped their lives to start primetime basketball camp, to have an inner-city summer basketball camp, where hundreds of kids this year participated, close to 200 in number at the Harrington School, and almost 1/3 of those children were on full scholarships. The rest were there at a very affordable rate due to the hard fundraising work and work of Billy and Jimmy Edghill. And this is exactly the type of organization that we need in Cambridge, because not only do these kids have an organized structure to go to during the summer to learn and play basketball, but they avail themselves to the mentoring and the role models and the leadership that people like Jim Edgehill and Bill Ewing can provide, because these kids sense and know in these two gentlemen that they've been there, they've seen what they've seen, and kids can look up to people like this because they've been there. And at this time, Galluccio Associates is very proud to give a special recognition award to primetime basketball, and I'd like Mr. Bill Ewing and Jim Edgehill to come up to receive on behalf of primetime basketball.
I think I've been the designated spokesperson for Billy and I. Billy and I would like to thank Galluccio Associates for this award this morning. We're very honored to be here. We would also like to congratulate the other honorees this morning for their dedication and support for all the youth in the city of Cambridge. Billy and I, as Anthony had mentioned, started Primetime because we wanted to give something back to the youth of the city. Like he said, we provided 60 scholarships for the kids last year, and we'd like that number to grow this upcoming year. We would also like to acknowledge a couple of people that helped Primetime. If they could stand, please, that are here. Paul Ryder, the Director of Recreation in the City of Cambridge. Paul's right there. Bobby Goodwin, who is the Director of Summer Programs and Youth Sports and Resources. Jamie Hallway, who I don't know if he showed up yet, but wanted to make sure we recognize him also. And last but not least, Mr. Anthony Galluccio, who was probably, I grew up with Anthony and I knew him from the high school, and he was probably the initial person to get this ball rolling with Paul Ryder and Bobby Goodwin. So without Anthony, we probably wouldn't be here today. And we'd like to recognize Anthony, Billy, and I. This says, presented to Anthony Galluccio in appreciation of your outstanding dedication to the youth of the City of Cambridge, Primetime Basketball School.
Jim designated himself because he knew I wouldn't shut up, so. I also want to, I've been out of Cambridge sports, I should say, playing-wise for over 20 years, but I just want to recognize some people that were role models to me, and they're here. Vinnie Millie was actually my coach in high school. He looks good, too, but he actually was my coach on the 79 team. George Greenwich, who lived 2 doors down and used to knock on my door in the morning to play football. Coach Greenwich. And also, I really want to thank Paul Ryder, because without Paul, we probably wouldn't be in existence. He could have said, get lost on that first meeting. Matter of fact, I think he did, and we just kept coming back. But I really want to especially thank Paul. And if I missed anybody, or if we missed anybody, please forgive us. But Anthony said we stopped our lives to stop primetime. Well, that's not actually accurate. It's part of our lives. It's something that is very important to us. And we're very proud that it's up and running, and we thank you for helping us. So, thank you.
I'd like to get to our second 1999 Special Recognition Award. And this award is a very special one. And as you know, Galluccio Associates has a very difficult time picking these awards. Over the last few years, and as you see from the list that you have before you, these are truly legends in youth sports and in the Cambridge community. And every year we go through a process where we attempt to, have people submit recommendations to us. We go through them, and it's an arduous process because we like to have a lot of different sports covered. We like to go back in decades because before this organization, many of the people that participated before my generation didn't have an opportunity to be recognized. So we like to span the decades and span sports, and you can imagine what a difficult choice it is to do that. The next name was not a very difficult choice. For those who have been involved over the last several decades in Cambridge, whether you were in a recreational basketball league, you were in a Babe Ruth game, or you were in a softball game, and many of you will remember the old barnyard and recreational softball games were not easy games to umpire, and neither were the recreational summer hoop games, as Bobby, you can attest to. This man is truly a legend in youth sports, and not only can we say that he umped and refereed thousands of games, but this man was special because he befriended the people that he worked with. He was a model for children, the way he handled himself, and most importantly, the way he was always willing to contribute his time to charity. If there was a game, a softball game or a baseball game or a charity event, Mike Seco was there at that event on his own time to do that. And we felt it was so important at this time for us to recognize someone who's been on as many fields and as many courts as anyone in the history of City of Cambridge sports. And at this time, I'd like to have the legendary Mike Seco join us at the stage.
I want you to stand up there. He is standing up.
I want to thank you people for coming. I enjoy all you over the years. Thank you very much.
I'd just like to say a quick thank you for my family. I'd like to thank Galluccio Associates and all the work that you do. Keep up the good work. I'd like to thank Lou DiPasquale for helping to get my dad this honor. And also I'd like to say thank you to Jim Fanning for nominating my dad. And I second what George Greenwich said. I graduated from Ringe Tech in 1966 and spent the first 14 years of my life at Donley Field with my father, either running from the car or to the car. Why did they chase us? He always told me it was to get to the next game, but there was a big crowd chasing us to the car. But I second in saying that the youth today really need organizations like Galluccio Associates. And if my dad taught me one thing, of all the years that we spent together, he taught me that caring is the most important thing. And that's the gift that I hope that he left with all of us, that if you just care for somebody else, it comes back to you 100-fold. So thank you very much for all of you.
At this time, I'd like to have Jim Fanning and Paul Ryder come up with a special presentation for Mike Seco. Jim Fanning.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Anthony hates to give up the mic, so I'm going to be very, very brief. Two things. You think I said no to Billy Ewing? If I did it over the phone. It wasn't in person. But Mike Seco, to me, represents everything that is right for recreation, not only in Cambridge, but throughout America. He is one of the finest human beings I've ever met in my life. He is a true gentleman, and for that only, he deserves this award, because he is the nicest guy I've ever met in my life.
First of all, Mike, I want to say you got a double-header tomorrow at St. Pete's. When you were nominated and finally Anthony told me you were getting this award, myself and Paul and Kevin Clark and other members of Recreation said we should probably do something also. We try to collectively think of something that everyone would remember you by. So I know you and I have done things on TV. We've done charity things together. So I went around the city and asked for people if they had any pictures or anything of you umpiring. Everyone said they threw them away. But I remember one thing. I think everybody in this room who was around then more than likely saw you on TV. Do you remember where you were on May 10th, 1970? You were at Center Ice, Boston Garden, giving Bobby Orr a big kiss. Bobby Orr had just scored his legendary goal. Mike Seeker was the first one on ice. So at this time, we'd like to present to you a little gift from Bobby Orr. He said you were probably one of the best kisses. So we'd like to present this picture to you, signed by Bobby Orr. To Mike Seeker, Bobby Orr. It's a picture, if you can't see it, of him taking a dive after his goal.
I feel great. At this time, I want to introduce a good friend, and I'm going to attempt to be as nice as possible because I know that the venom that could be unleashed on me in the next few minutes could be pure political and human torture. My close friend, I could not have more respect for, the next speaker. As you know, Steve Buckley appeared at the first annual breakfast. He was here, he did a great job. He vanished for a couple of years. There were a variety of excuses. At one point, you were in North Carolina, I think. There was a horse racing, Kentucky Derby going on. He called me from different areas of the country and told me that he couldn't be at the event. This year we got started good and early, and Steve made sure that he was here. I just want to give a brief history of Steve Buckley, because all of us now know him as a TV star and a broadcasting star and a shining light in the Boston Herald. Also, he is a lead player in the Kristen Mastriani show. Many of you may have seen that. Louis was actually recently banned from watching the show, Steve, because of Kristen. But Steve Buckley, despite all these successes, started here in Cambridge. Mario DePiero, you will remember, back in the days when Steve was a coach in Central Little League. Mario actually told me the story when Steve first showed up as a teenager to umpire. Mario promptly explained to him that he was out of his league and paid him $10 to go home. True story. That is a true story. Steve went on to be a Babe Ruth coach. And he coached with the likes of Paul Abreu and legends like Lou DiPasquale and George Alexander.
Always beat them.
Who says he always beat them. That wasn't what we talked about over Chinese food last night, Steve. But we're gonna be nice. And then he was off to Seattle. And Louis told me he remembered the story when Steve came to the different coaches in the league and said, guys, I want to be a sports writer. I'm leaving Cambridge and I'm going to Seattle. Mario had it at 100 to 1 that he would be back within 2 weeks. He left for Seattle, and by the way, what Louis asked me to ask you, Steve, was did you take that special $60 bat with you when you left to Seattle that you bought? Louis told me a great story. Steve bought, before like aluminum bats were a big deal, Steve Buckley had to have the best for his team, so he went out and bought the $60 aluminum bat. And in his real introduction, and you can remember, Babe Ruth days down in Donnelly Field back in the 70s were not easy nights. I mean, beside the fact that you had fireworks and everything else going on in the outfield, it wasn't a good idea to argue and fight with some of the opposing coaches. And Louis told me a story, I think his name was Coach Westcott, said to Steve, Steve would like to use the bat, and Steve explained, as Steve has always been, really had that altar boy image growing up, he explained that this was my money that I paid for this particular bat for my team to advance the interests of my players, and that he could not use the bat. And Mr. Westcott explained in diplomatic Babe Ruth terms, Steve, you have two choices. You either let us use the bat or the bat goes over your head. And Steve said, at this time I'd like to volunteer the services of this bat for your team in fairness. He then went on to be a sports writer for the New York Yankees, and I don't know if people remember that. But that's when you grew near and dear to the Red Sox fans around here. And then finally, he came back really to be a prominent figure. And it's so great to watch Steve Buckley and read Steve Buckley, because for me, and I know for many of you in the sports community, we ensure, and it gives us that feeling that Cambridge is out there and Cambridge is represented in the sports world and in the media. And I know all of you get that same feeling when you turn him on or see his byline, because you know Steve Buckley's a Cambridge kid, and he's never forgotten that. And there isn't a show that you turn on, whether he's talking about the Kentucky Derby or the World Series or a very momentous trade or one of the biggest events that can happen in sports, and Steve will be on, and somebody from Cambridge, usually from North Cambridge, Billy McGaffigan, will call up and bring up some event that happened 20 years ago in Little League or Babe Ruth, a call that was made that he felt went the wrong way, and Steve will diplomatically have to shift the show back to the focus subject being the World Series or some national event. But we know that Steve Buckley loves those calls, and it's what makes Steve Buckley who he is. And Steve, we thank you so much for coming back today.
I guess I'm only here because I ran out of excuses. The Kentucky Derby, I was in the road with the Red Sox, I was having the car waxed, I was having my toenails clipped. I just kind of ran out of stuff, so I had to be here today because of Anthony. And it was interesting because the Galluccio Associates Committee had a meeting during the winter, and they decided, let's invite a well-known Cambridge native who has gone on to big things to our breakfast this morning. Let's go out and get a real celebrity, bring him in here, and have him talk. Unfortunately, Matt Damon wasn't available. They tried for Ben Affleck, and they tried Casey Affleck. Jimmy Tingle's doing 60 Minutes now. He wasn't around. Tried for Lenny Clark, but he's off in Vegas doing the stand-up. He couldn't make it. They had Patrick Ewing lined up, but the Knicks are in the playoffs, so that wasn't going to happen. Mike Jarvis couldn't make it up, so they thought they had Peggy Cass lined up. They had that all set. Turned out Peggy Cass is dead, so that wasn't going to happen. So it finally came down to two people. Me and the guy, the chess master in Harvard Square, the guy that plays everyone in chess. So it was down to the two of us. It turns out the chess master had a big grudge match against some homeless guy at the Boston Common. So they decided to invite me here this morning, so here I am. And it's always good for me, because I've gone on to bigger and better things, to come back to Cambridge, to the little people here. Even though I've gone on to bigger and better things and I've moved out of the city, I'm not too big that I can't come back from Somerville and say hi to everybody here in Cambridge this morning. So what's the deal with Anthony Galluccio? Now I'm thinking Willie McGinnis is here, and it's kind of appropriate these two guys are here because Willie McGinnis plays for the Patriots, and they won this many games, and then this many games, and then this many games. Anthony Galluccio runs the state rep, he got this many votes, and then this many votes. And, the thing is,
Steve, George Greenwich wants to say a few more words.
And the thing with these politicians, I don't know about you, but do you think some of these politicians gotten out of hand? A little arrogant, a little above the fray. I was very happy a couple weeks ago. Tommy Finnerman was speaking, and I guess Finnerman made a big speech to the Massachusetts legislature. You wouldn't have heard it, Anthony, you weren't there.
Where's my mother? Mom! My mother's even laughing. It's an all-time low. My mother's cracking up. Mom, what are you laughing at, Mom? Ma, you're my mother. You're on my side.
So Speaker Finneran tells the legislature, we're getting too full of ourselves. We're getting too above the fray. We need, all of us in the state legislature, to reach out to the little people. And Alice Wolf took this very seriously. As soon as she got home, she called Anthony. There are a lot of politicians here today. It's good to see Jarrett Barrios here. He's our newest state rep from Cambridge. And Jarrett, stand up for a second. This is Jarrett Barrios, folks. Stand up. Jarrett Barrios, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know this guy, he grew up in Florida. He moved here, went to Harvard, got a job in Boston, ran for state rep, got elected in his first try, unlike Anthony. Anyway, Jarrett Barrios, ladies and gentlemen, We should be proud of this man. He is living proof that if you have honesty, diligence, and a bunch of rich lawyers to give you $100,000, you can do anything in this state. And a lot of people don't realize that Jarrett Berrios and Anthony, that Anthony got Jarrett. Jarrett was secretly involved in Anthony's campaign last time around. That Anthony was trying to run for state rep, and he needed advice, so he went to Jarrett. And Jarrett said, well, this is what you do. You go out and get some of these big law firms in Boston to get involved in your campaign. And you get two of the biggest law firms to donate money, and you put that right on top of your campaign list. And then when people see that, they will get involved in your campaign. And Jarrett showed his papers to Anthony, and right at the top it says Hill and Barlow, Hale and Dorr. And Anthony said, you know, that's a pretty good idea. Anthony didn't quite get it, though. At the top of his list it says the law offices of James Sokolov. Just didn't quite have the same ring to it. It's good to see, speaking of lawyers, Gary Romagna, my good friend from Cambridge Highland. Gary, stand up. Gary, thank you very much. Gary Romagna. Gary, stand up a second. Gary's wife just had a baby. Congratulations. Give him a round of applause.
Good job, Gary.
Gary and I went to high school together, and we used to hang out on Jefferson Street in East Cambridge in the old days and sit in the car and smoke cigarettes and tell lies and all this. And Gary's gone on to huge things now. He's a lawyer in East Cambridge, and unfortunately, Gary's very busy. Work constantly keeps him on the road. He's constantly traveling. He's constantly drumming up business all around the country, and he doesn't get a chance to spend as much time at home as he'd like. He's in Pittsburgh. He's in New York. You know how these lawyers are. They're always running around. And so Gary comes back from an exhaustive trip a while back, spends a couple of days at home, goes back on the road for 4 or 5 weeks, comes back home, and at one point he comes back home, and Connie is there to greet him at the door. He says, honey, I'm pregnant, we're going to have a baby. And he says, oh, that's great, oh, it's wonderful. Oh, how many weeks pregnant are you? And she says, 6 weeks. And he says, oh, great. And he starts to walk away. He's like, 6 weeks? And she says, maybe 5. 5 weeks, it might have been 7, you know, I'm not really sure. Turns out the baby's name is Daniel, which happens to be the name of Gary's law partner. I don't know what that's all about. George Greenwich is here. It's good to see George Greenwich. George, stand up. Now, I'd like to explain to you folks one of the great ironies of my life. This is a true story. Absolute true story. George, you can sit down now, George. Geez, you give this guy an opening, he just takes right over. George was my gym teacher. True story, in grammar school, at Longfellow School. And I was a chubby little kid. And he was my gym. And he was always saying, you gotta lose weight, you're too fat, you gotta lose weight. This was all through grammar school. All through grammar school, George Greenwich is saying, you gotta lose weight. Now here it is 30 years later. And every time I show up at Fenway Park, there's George. Have a sausage! Have a sausage, Buck! And it's interesting because George's partner is George Papalambros. Do you all know George from Cambridge? And the two of them run a sausage stand. This is true. They run a sausage stand outside Fenway Park. And George grew up in the house in front of mine on Prospect Street. So George and I went to Longfellow School together, and they had this like career day one day. And this guy comes by Longfellow School and talks about all the different careers you can go into. And we're all talking about, you know, the guy asks us what we want to be when we grow up. You know, I want to be a sports writer. Gary Tingle says, I want to be a carpenter. Georgie Papalambros says, I want to sell sausages with Mr. Greenwich outside Fenway Park. And we all got our wish, which is kind of a cool thing. Mario DePiro is here. God, what a great... And the true story, by the way, I really did, when I was 18 years old, go down to Donnelly Field to umpire a game, and Mario really did hand me $10 and send me home. He says, get out of here, you're too young. That's a true story. But Mario's always been very involved in youth sports in Cambridge. It's just a great thing. He was involved in Little League and Babe Ruth. But it's kind of interesting, if you follow the parallel here, that, what was your oldest son, Bobby? Bobby is in, you know, in Bobby's talent, Bobby was an okay first baseman, not really one of the better ones, but he was okay. But Mario wanted the best for his boy. Mario wanted his boy to be an all-star. So if you follow the timeline, Bobby DePiero becomes a member of the East Division, Little League down at Darnley Field. Mario becomes president of the East Division. Bobby makes the All-Stars. Bobby moves on to play in the Babe Ruth League. What do you play for, the White Sox? Play for the White Sox. Mario becomes president of the Cambridge Babe Ruth League. Bobby makes the All-Stars. Bobby goes on to play with Suffolk. Mario became president of Suffolk University. Mario now owns a string of bar rooms in Greater Boston, so Bobby can play softball. That's it. Billy McGaffigan, my old shortstop. Billy was my shortstop in the Cambridge Babe Ruth League on the Orioles many, many years ago. He's gone on to bigger and better things, and Billy and I bump into each other now and then. Now, do you all know about the charity baseball game I have every year in Cambridge? The old-time baseball game up in North Cambridge? Billy played in the game last year. Now, this is a big deal because we have some of the best college players in Greater Boston playing this game. Carlos Pena, who was one of the top draft picks in the country, played in last year's game 2 years ago. Last year, Greg Montalbano, who was drafted in the 5th round by the Red Sox, was our starting pitcher. And Sean McGowan from Burlington, with the game-winning home run, he was one of our players, and he got drafted by the San Francisco Giants in the 3rd round. So we decided that last year, because we have players from so many different areas, that we would have a member of the Greater Boston Senior Men's Baseball League. So we had a player who was over 30 years old play with us, and the player they chose, and I'm being serious, of all the players they could have chosen, they chose Billy McGaffigan to play in our game last year, and I want to thank you for coming last year. The thing with Billy is a lot of the kids didn't really understand exactly how old they were. They kept going up to him and asking him what it was like to see Ted Williams play. Billy was a little upset about that. But Billy brought his own rooting section with him. He brought 100 people, and they all sat in right field to cheer. And it even said McGaff's Corner. It was great. This is true. It was a big thrill to see McGaff's Corner in right field and 100 people in right field. The only problem was that this was the first time in the history of the old-time baseball game we had obstructed view seats, because these people in right field couldn't see around Billy's backside to see the pitcher on the mound. So it was a little unfortunate that Billy was playing first base. Before I sit down, I have to pay homage to my good buddy George Alexander. I've never seen George without his cap on. Now I know why. I wanted to pay homage to make George feel comfortable. I thought that I would wear a baseball cap this morning. Is Tim Toomey here? Is Tim not here? I've never seen George without Tim. The Lenny and Squiggy of Cambridge. It's amazing. Now, Tim Toomey and I go way back, because Tim and I always had a rivalry since we were kids. So I came to Boston. I got the job at the Herald. So he went out and ran for city council. Then I got the job at WEEI. He said, oh yeah? So he ran for state rep. He's a state rep now. I got the job at New England Cable News, and now Toomey's running for Congress next year to keep that thing going. But George and I go way back. George coached do you still coach the Tigers? He coached the Tigers in the Cambridge Babe Ruth League. And this is another sad but true story, is that Billy McGaffigan was one of my pitchers. And you know what I'm going to say, right? Mm-hmm. Billy must not have thought I was a very good coach. Because my team made the playoffs every year. We used to beat up on Louis' team and beat up on... So my team makes the playoffs. We're in the finals against the A's. Louis' team didn't make it. George's team didn't make it. I get Billy on the mound, and George Alexander is behind the screen. And I'm up there giving my signals to Billy, and Billy's looking in, okay, okay. It turns out, and this is a true story, he's getting his signals from George Alexander, the coach of the other team. What's that all about? And you're going to honor him? Who won the championship in 1978?
I don't know.
Billy McGaffigan. Who won the championship in 1978? How many playoff games did we lose in the playoffs?
Couple.
Who was the losing pitcher in both cases?
Me.
And you listen to him? Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Also wanted to recognize, and I think he had to leave, but my colleague on the council, Michael Sullivan, was here and joined us, and I think he had to take off. Before we get to our guest speaker, I want to just say a few words to give Willie McGinnis a good sense of just where Cambridge sports is right now, because we had just a great year this year. And for those of you who've been following baseball this year, before I forget, I got a call last week from Mark DeRoche. And as many of you followed the Providence College baseball team this year, wasn't it great to see Mark DeRoche from North Cambridge not only become pitcher of the year in the Big East, but really put Cambridge back on the national map. I haven't heard a Cambridge kid mentioned that many times really since back in the days when Ramil Robinson was at Michigan. I'd love to recognize Mark DeRoche today. He couldn't be here because he's in New York visiting his girlfriend in Long Island, unlike myself who went to Providence College and never met a girl from Long Island. I'm here with you today. We all know that Cambridge had a great year in sports, and I just want to run through very quickly. North Cambridge Catholic State Championships. The McGrails give their regards. They couldn't be here today. Girls volleyball team, second consecutive GBL title this year. Boys cross country, Eastern Mass Division I title. Football team, 5-4 record. Now, Willie, that might not sound good to you, but let me tell you something. In Cambridge, Massachusetts, when you have a winning football team, you celebrate. This is a team that came from when Joe Grassi and I and Barry Lyons were on the team. We won one game the whole time we were at the high school. Coach Timmons has turned this program around thanks to the help of the Pop Warner program, which has fed that program. And I know Pop Warner's here and Jackie Adams, and we have a whole table over there. Cambridge football had a competitive season this year. Boys soccer, state tournament at Ringen Latin. Boys basketball, GBL League, advanced to the second round of Division I tournament. And, Willie, if you also know Cambridge, it means very little to us that the boys basketball team just went to the second round. Cambridge can be very tough on their basketball team, but in all fairness to this team, they had a great season. They did Cambridge proud, and it's tough to follow in the footsteps of people like Billy Ewing and Pat Ewing and Ramil Robinson and Jim Edgehill, but this team was very competitive this year. The girls basketball team, and we're going to talk about them, GBL League Championship, and they advanced into 2 games into the state championships. Boys indoor track, undefeated season. Girls indoor track, GBL title. Boys hockey, and Bobby Goodwin, no longer the coach, but you really started this going, Bobby. State tournament for the 2nd straight season. Girls ice hockey got started and had a great first year. Girls rowing is starting. We have a new rowing program at the high school. Girls softball is starting to take off, thanks to the help of people like you. Girls outdoor track, GBL, let's see. The 4 800-meter relay, they broke the school record and they won the GBL championship. Outdoor track, GBL championship. Girls tennis, GBL championship. Let's see. Boys volleyball team, again, state tournament qualifying. Matanon had a great hockey season this year. Cambridge is flying in sports. We have one of the best Pop Warner programs in the state. Our girls softball program is flying. Our tennis, our track. Paul Sullivan is out there. Just missed the state tournament again in baseball. But let me tell you something. Those young people under George and Paul Sullivan are learning not only about baseball, but how to be young gentlemen. And that's most important for us here at Galluccio Associates. We had a great year in Cambridge sports. And at this time, we are honored to have our guest speaker come up. And I just want to say a few words. And as many of you know, we've been lucky enough to have some great guest speakers in the past. Willie McGinnis has taken time out of his busy schedule. In the past, we've had really retired pro athletes come back. To me, this is paramount today that we were able to get Willie McGinnis, who is a star player currently in the NFL. He's 28 years old. 29? 27, I'm sorry. I get jealous of those under 30s out there. Let me tell you just a little bit about Willie McGinnis. And I tracked Willie down, and we've been trying to get a hold of him. We made contact through my assistant at City Hall, Phaedra Butler, and Bobby Francis, who I played with at high school. But the trying moment was when Whitey and I were at the Lauryn Hill concert. And Whitey had to go to the bathroom or say hi to the 400th person that he saw that night. And I was standing there, and it was like an image just came from the side of my eyes, and I looked, and there he was, Willie McGinnis. He had left his seats to go to the bathroom, and I viciously attacked him. I think he thought I was gonna go after him and try to take his money, and I introduced myself. Ever since then, Willie has been there and letting us know that he's happy to be here today. So I want to thank Willie, because this means a lot. 4-year varsity athlete at University of Southern California. First team All Pac-10, USC Defensive Player of the Year. In 1992, he led the Pac-10 in sacks. I want to go back just a little, too. Willie McGinnis was a 2-sport athlete in California. And for all the young people out there, that's 2 sports. Willie was an outstanding basketball player. He was all-league in basketball. He was All-American in football. Willie, in 1994, for the New England Patriots, received all-rookie recognition in Pro Football Weekly and Pro Football News Weekly, and he was the 1776 Quarterback Club 1994 Rookie of the Year. In just his second season at outside linebacker, Willie was a Pro Bowl alternate. He led the team, and he was 5th in the NFL in sacks, and he was 4th in the all-time Patriots history for sacks. In his 3rd season and his 1st season at defensive end, he received All-Pro recognition and played in the Pro Bowl. He's out of Long Beach, California, but you know, Willie McGinnis is in Boston now, and I can tell you firsthand that Willie McGinnis cares about people. And one of the first things Willie said to me about doing this breakfast, it wasn't about money or about recognition or about how many people are going to be there or what was the media going to be aware of the event so that he could get credit. All he said to me was, Anthony, I just asked one thing. If I come across some people in my life that need help, would you be willing to help them? And that's what he asked us to do. And I said, Willie, that's exactly what Cambridge is all about. And we're starting to do that, and I know this is a relationship that we're going to have for a long, long time. At this point, I'd like to introduce a college graduate who majored in public administration at the University of Southern California, and also mention not just as an athlete, but Billy is also an avid bird watcher and a student of calligraphy. I want to mention the well-rounded Willie McGinnis.
You guys see the cable guy? When the guy kept leaving a message on the answer machine. So Anthony calls me, Willie, I'm just about to get in the shower. Just want to make sure you're going to show up 4 weeks from now. Call him back, Anthony, I'll be there. Willie, I'm just leaving the office, just going to run a couple of errands. Just give me a call back if you're going to be there. Call him back, I'll be there. Anthony, I'll be there. Willie, I'm on the line. Just gotta take 5 minutes to let you know. So what that was telling me is that he was serious about the youth and what's going on in Cambridge, as well as people should be, and people like myself was when I was growing up. And he was really persistent. I was 5 minutes late and he was paging me 911. When I walked through the door, my pager was going off and I looked down, he was like, that's me. He knew he was paging me. So, I mean, that was real important to me. And helping people has always been a part of my life. Growing up in the inner city, we didn't grow up with a lot of money. We didn't grow up with the better things in lives. And if it wasn't for athletics, special coaches, youth counselors, and people in my environment, then I don't think I would have been on the correct path to where I am today. There were a lot of distractions growing up in the inner city, as we all know, as far as drugs, gangs, and a lot of other things that sometimes pull you away from that. And when I was smaller, my father was away, so my mom saw me kind of drifting off. She put me in the football. She took me at 9 years old and signed me up. And most mothers don't want to see their baby son go and play football, get knocked around, but she did it. And the after-school programs, the educational, the youth centers, when football was over, I was there. I was playing baseball. When baseball, t-ball, when that was over, I was in basketball. And it just kept me going. The special coaches and people that I had in my life was a big influence on me. And when I talked to Anthony, I said, I moved to Boston. I met some guys that's had a rough time in their lives, and they're not on the level I am or anyone else, that they can't even go get a job because it's, they're past. And I said, well, I have some guys who's trying to do the right things. Well, I'm trying to show them the right road to go down to. Could you help me out? And he said, of course. And I sent some people up there, and he's a great guy. We click, and we will be doing a lot of things together. And I don't mind coming here speaking or being a part of this, because it's special when people help each other. That's what's important. It's not for the younger people. I mean, you see a lot of athletes on TV, and you see a lot of stars, and there are some good people to look up to. But the people who spend their time, who don't get paid a dime, the volunteers, the coaches who don't get paid as much, but they're there every day, the school teachers, the parents who are constantly telling you to do your homework and stay in school, those are the real role models. Those are the real people who you see every day, who should get more recognition and more respect around each city, no matter where you are, because those are the people who work really hard to keep us in a straight path. And if it wasn't for my younger days, for me having that guidance, I wouldn't have known once I got in college and I was on my own which way to go. So it started when I was younger. It's real important. I go back today. I still spend time with the coaches. I work out with the coaches from when I was younger. I started programs. I work with the Ronald McDonald House Charity. You forgot that out. You forgot my charity stuff, see. I work with the Big Brother Association, the Ronald McDonald House Charity. You see those McDonald commercials? That's through the Ronald McDonald House Charity. I'm not doing that for money or to be on TV, but that's helping people, the after-school program. The Patriots have an organization where the people, we do at least 10 appearances, nonprofit. We go to schools, we speak to kids, whatever. So to me, it's important. I try to give back. I try to do what my parents raised me to do was right. You younger people, it's hard. We all make mistakes and nobody's perfect. But if you try hard and you live up to your dreams, don't let anybody take anything away from you. And you don't have to be a football star or a basketball star to be successful. You can be a doctor, you can be a lawyer, you can work at the post office. If you're doing the right things in your life and you're happy and you know you're doing good and you're helping people, then you're successful, and always remember that. Thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Willie, thank you very much. That was great. That public administration degree shows through. You did a great job. Let's just give another round of applause. You can't get any better than this for us today at all. Here's me. This is what I was just going to read. Anthony G. called me 70 times. That's Willie's note to himself. I'd also, at this time, I'd like to thank my good friend, and as you can see from this program, this is a lot of work, and it came out just perfect. Tom Underwood, who went to work on this a few weeks ago. Tom Underwood, great job with the program this year. Have to thank, at this time, Steve spared some good jokes I know you had stored up for me because you get focused on other people. But I want to thank at this time everyone involved in Galluccio Associates on a day-to-day level. And especially at this time, I'd like to thank our treasurer and secretary, the person who writes the checks, does the books, tells me we're running out of money, we need to get more. And who really, without this person, there is no doubt in my mind this organization would not be in existence. My mother, Nancy Galluccio. By the way, Steve, what really makes me nervous going into an election year with her being my biggest fan, no one laughed harder at your jokes about my political failure than my mother did. I'd like to recognize the league presidents that are here today to join us, and we couldn't be here today if it wasn't the support of all the leagues in the city. My good friend and former catching mentor, Marco Giampa's here, who's doing a dynamite job. We have Lawrence Pierce from youth hockey who's here. Eddie Chason, the president of West Little League. And we have Jackie Adams, the president of Cambridge Pop Warner. At this time, we'd like to get to the reason that we're here. We now are going to give away the Youth Sports Volunteer Recognition Awards. This is a part of the program that I think most of us enjoy the most. And today we have such a great lineup of recipients. And as you'll see as we go forward, what's great about this group, I believe, is you really run the gamut in terms of personalities. Each one of them has contributed in such a very special way to the lives of young people in the city. And each one of them has done it in their own way. And I think that's what makes youth sports so special, because each person has a different approach that they use to get to the kids, to help the players, to keep kids involved. And I'm not talking about winning. I'm talking about keeping kids believing in themselves and being confident and coming day in and day out and not walking away and not quitting. Because let's face it, if there is the most important lesson to be learned in sports, it's to not quit. Because that's one lesson that we all carry on to all our other areas of life when we go on in our professional career, in our families. And that's a lesson that gets learned in Cambridge throughout these organizations. And every one of these recipients, I believe, embodies what it is to allow players to believe in themselves and to never give up. It is unarguable. Ken Cleary and the impact that he's made on the Cambridge Youth Hockey program really has been truly amazing. Ken Cleary had tough shoes to fill in attempting to work in a program that embodied such a great person like Sil Ferreira, who we had recognized earlier in the first year at Galluccio Associates. Ken Cleary rose up and put together what I think, and I think what all of you here would agree to be, is probably one of the most renowned and well-known youth hockey programs in Massachusetts. And that's the way Cambridge is thought of right now in terms of a hockey powerhouse. Ken Cleary took this program from 4 traveling teams to 13 traveling teams. Most importantly, which I thought just said it all, was in 1996, Cambridge Youth Hockey was chosen the best youth hockey program in Massachusetts. And you can't do any better than that. And this program, and as many of you know, the work that goes into the early mornings and late nights of youth hockey require an incredible sacrifice. But this program and the people that have come together and been involved under Ken Cleary could not be providing better role models and a better structure for values and character. And we're seeing it as they impact places like Cambridge, Ringe, and Latin, and you've seen the success there, and the continuous impact that it has on Matanon. This program is here to stay. Ken Cleary has really, I think, put Cambridge Youth Hockey back on the map. And I want to say on behalf of Galluccio Associates at this time, thank you, Ken Cleary.
First of all, I want to thank Galluccio Associates and for all the things that they do for the youth in the city of Cambridge. I do want to mention that this morning when my 3 older boys decided that they had to get up for this, and I was having a little trouble encouraging them to do so, and I said, well, yeah, you have to understand, George Alexander's going to get an award there today. And James said, oh, I'm going. He's not going to have his hat on. He says, I've never seen him without that hat. All right? Seriously, though, I have 3 sons. My 3 older boys have all had George as a coach. And I feel very strongly that the people that are up here do a tremendous job, as a lot of people in this room. And I feel honored to be considered among those people. I do want to, and I don't have a long list here, but one of the things that's really important to me is that people understand that it's a real team effort to do any of these things.
I just happened to be the guy in the right place at the right time. Some of the people that work at Cambridge Youth Hockey that are the real superstars that really do a lot of the grunt work. And whenever you make lists of people, you always forget somebody. So I'm very nervous to read a list, but I'm going to read a list anyway. And these are the people that really have done a very good job in getting youth hockey and hockey in general is one of the top sports in Cambridge. And I'd like to thank Bob and Barbara Mahoney, Jack Ciccarelli, Teresa Katayev, George Spadacino, Alex Canseco, Kevin Matrano, Kenny McManus, Lawrence Pierce, Brendan Line, John Kelso, Danny Coffey, Don Malloy, Vinnie Milley. You know, Vinny's all over the place, so, you know, both basketball and hockey. Lisa Brewster, Fernando Rodriguez, my father, who's still coaches today, even who coached when I was a kid, Jack Mahoney and many others. All these people, all right, contribute to make that program successful. I'd also like to make sure that I mention this one person, all right, that in 1 week we will be married 25 years. And our first date was her coming to one of my basketball games. And I laid it on thick. I said, here's the way it is, baby. All right? This is the way it's going to be. Someday we're going to have 4 boys, and you're going to be just sitting there wondering what the hell you got yourself into. And she's been a teacher in Cambridge for close to 20 years. She's been very dedicated. Sometimes I think the teachers, they need as much support as anybody, and she's been as active with kids in Cambridge, and every once in a while we go up to the square and she'll see somebody and she'll say, I'm old because, God, I had that person, and they're now 22 years old. You know, so I want to thank my wife for putting up with all this stuff and my family for dealing with all this. I want to thank Anthony very much. Thank you.
Leslie Davis has such a way of making you feel comfortable, and she's so laid back and humble that you get to know her and you become her friend, and it's a great relationship. And that's what's so special about Leslie, because I can see that she has that relationship with her kids, and that these kids are comfortable and relaxed, and the girls can talk to her and deal with her really on a friendship basis. Not that they don't have respect for Leslie, because believe me, they do, and that has shown through in the fact that this girls' basketball team has gone from last place to 2 consecutive Greater Boston League championships under the head coaching of Leslie Davis over the last 3 years. And we know that Cambridge, back in the days of Medina Dixon and back in your era, Billy, when girls' basketball was at the top of the state, it's been a long time, and Leslie has really made sure that that has happened. And what's most important, and this doesn't happen all the time, but you can be assured that Leslie's girls wanted to be here. And when I said to them, you know, we want to donate some tickets to the kids to make sure that they're here, they all jumped at the opportunity, and they're here to support Leslie Davis. This person is a gem. She's exactly what sports and high school sports should embody. And I know she's going places, but I have a feeling that this is the type of one-on-one relationship that she thrives on, and the type of grassroots youth sports and interaction with kids is what she's out for. So I know she's going to be around for a long time. This time we're very pleased and proud to have Leslie Davis, the girls coach at Cambridge Ridge and Latin, receive an award.
I'd like to thank Galluccio Associates for this award. I would also like to say, you know, when I took over the program 3 years ago, they were ready for a change, and I had some wonderful people that worked with me, starting with Maria Di Clemente, who I graduated with from Northeastern University, Cambridge teacher back there. Also, Carolyn O'Connor, who's been my assistant for 3 years. She was a student of mine at Manhattan High School. I also think I definitely have to thank my family who's in the back there, who have kind of kept me above the water there when I was kind of crazy during the season, and they've been a great support system for me. And once again, thank you.
is an interesting award for me today because Butch Dunphy and I interact with each other on a daily basis as he is Commissioner of Public Works. And, you know, I still call and I'll say, can you tell Butchie, you know, there's a pothole up on Blanchard Road and it's got to be fixed because this person is driving me nuts. And they say, Butchie? And this goes on. And all the people like me that are out there now will never see, you know, Kim as Commissioner Dunphy or even Ralph Dunphy. He's Butchie from the A's. And this goes back, I know Kevin Lyons is out there, but this goes back to my days. And Butchie's teams always they weren't always the best teams. I'll say that when I was playing. But they always had an aura about them because they were Butchie's teams. And they always had a unity and charisma about them. And that's what he brought to the A's. And I just want to point something out if you haven't looked at the program. Imagine 29 years of coaching Little League, and imagine almost 3 decades in West Division. He started in 1970 as a student at Boston College. Butchie also was cited as best coach in Cambridge Tab's Best of Edition. Now, I normally wouldn't mention that, but I believe that award has great credibility. Because there are other people in this room that have received similar awards in other categories, including the political category, Butch. And we may have taken a great part in your election, if I know some of my friends. I'd also like to recognize, and like I said, this isn't about winning, but not only has Butchie coached 500 players, but he's had 13 league championships, he's won a Mayor's Cup, 7 city all-star tournaments, but most importantly, I don't think that there's a kid in this city that not only played under Butch, but experienced Butch Dunphy that doesn't consider Butch a friend. Or a kid in the city who's come back, who maybe didn't get through college and came back early, who went to Butch and said, hey, Butch, Paul Sullivan's out there, who was my college roommate for 4 years, and Sully, who's got a great sandwich shop on Huron Ave, which we should all go to. When Sully was at a crossroads in his life, which was like 99% of the time, he went to Butch and said, Butch, what do you think? And Butch said, everyone needs a good sandwich shop, Sully, right? But in all seriousness, this is a type of relationship that he's built with his players, where they come to him as a person and for advice in their lives. And he's really been a mentor. He brings humor, aggressive coaching, vocal coaching, all together to embody one person where I think it's a laugh, cry, everything experience with Butch, and his players have never forgot it. And at this time, I'd like to, and I'm very proud, to have Ralph Butchie Dunphy, the coach of the A's, come on up.
Thanks, Anthony. As Gooch talks about it, and Willie actually mentioned, my beeper, 95% of the time, I know Anthony's car phone, his home phone. He beeps constantly, and the message always ends with, and tell him Councilor Galluccio asked me to ask you that. So it's always a relationship that Tony has always been asking for things. It's a pleasure to do things for people that appreciate it, and he certainly does that. As Gooch talked about, the 29 years that I've spent down at first at St. Peter's Field and now at the Tobin, we've won some, we've lost some. The biggest thrill that I get is when people ride by after they've been out of the league for a while, and just the other night, Kevin Lyons, who was my first draft choice actually, drives by Concord Avenue, stops, asks how's everything going, and it's that relationship. It isn't necessarily, as Tony talked about, the wins and losses that we've had, but the relationship with Paul Sullivan and Jamie Hallway, and the memories we have of Peter Stiller and when Jamie was a Yankee and thinking they've won the championship, and there's Peter Stiller waving his arm because there's a base hit to right field and he thinks the winning run is going to score, and Randy Spadaccino throws Davey Johnson out at first base. So those are the memories that I know Jamie has all the time, and it's a pleasure to be at the same place for a long time so that it's a constant. I think that, as Anthony talked about, people know that if you're there in June you're going to have a pretty good chance of seeing the same faces down at the West Division. And the West Division, as we all know, is a little bit different. I felt a little bit guilty, actually, when I looked at the program. I didn't really quite understand the volunteer aspect of it. I know the East and the Central and the North are different, but we up at the West, we've been getting paid for all these years, and I feel a little awkward about that now, but because as you know, we're the only division that has spring training on the vineyard every year, but that's the evolution of the league. It starts off with the Kevin Lyons, the Jamie Hallways, the Paul Sullivans, the Cochran Park group coming down and really getting West Division started under Dave Sullivan, who was one of the first presidents. Do you want this now?
No.
Oh, all right, okay. But again, thank you very much, and I appreciate all that you've done, and particularly to my players and my coaches. Thank you very much.
Great job, Butch. Fred Vigilante has been a stalwart, consistent person in East Cambridge Little League for consistent leadership for the kids in East Cambridge. And when they needed a quiet voice and a quiet pat on the back and someone to put their arm around them and say, look, just keep going. It'll be worth it. We'll have some fun today. Fred Vigilante was there. On behalf of all those kids and Galluccio Associates, we want to say thank you to Fred Vigilante.
I'd just like to thank Anthony Galluccio Associates for being among this elite group that they've chosen me to be with this group today. And I'm usually don't make speeches, so I'm a little bit nervous. But I would really like to thank the East Division, Little League Division, because we have a bunch of great guys and girls. And if it wasn't for them, the kids wouldn't be learning what they're learning today. So I'd just like to thank them for doing a great job. It's not an easy job, but they stick with it. Thank you. I also like to thank my two coaches, my son David and Greg Afero, he's not here today. He's working. If it wasn't for them, I probably would have retired a couple of years ago because they do the bulk of the work. I just sit back, sit back, the old guys sit back and relax. But I really want to thank them. I also like to thank my wife for putting up with us for the last 21 years, especially those great hot dog dinners before the games, which my two boys can vouch for. They're great dinners, but it's all in fun. And on behalf of all the little leaguers that go through the Cambridge system, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all the coaches and all the umpires, past and present, for giving these kids a chance to learn and play baseball. Thank you again. I really appreciate the honor. Thank you.
Cambridge Vision Latin basketball, Shoot Straight, North Cambridge Little League, Cambridge Youth Hockey, and Boston Latin basketball. That's quite a resume. And Vin Milley has done it all in Cambridge sports, and again, in sort of a quiet way. Vin Milley started back in the days of Pat Ewing, back in the days, I don't know if you remember Vinny, but was that a real afro that Tommy Curtin was wearing in that picture back in 1979? But back in the days in Cambridge's heyday of basketball, Vin Milley was there quietly as an assistant to Coach Mike Jarvis. He then went on and received Coach of the Year awards at Boston Latin High School in 1985. What I think is most telling about Vin Milley, Shoot Straight back in our day, and I know a lot of Barry and my friends will remember, Shoot Straight was the thing to do when we were younger because Mr. Jarvis would have different players from Region Latin basketball come on Saturdays. So you wanted to be around those people, and that was a tremendous thing when you were a young kid in Cambridge to be around those players. After things wound down after Patrick Ewing, Shoot Straight could have declined and gone away. Vin Milley made sure that it didn't go away. And he carried shoot straight, from 1978 to 1998, really making sure that that program stayed together after the heyday was over. He's been a very recognized scout in New England. He's been on the Cambridge Youth Hockey Board since 1996, a coach in North Little League. Also on an educational level, we're very proud. He was a 1997 recipient of the James Bryant Conan Fellowship at Harvard's Graduate School. Vinnie Milley has been a consistent force in youth sports. And like everyone else at this table, what's really amazing to me about this award, every one of the people that I called to let them know that they had been nominated and elected to receive a volunteer award, every one of them here said, it can't be me. And I think that says so much about these individual people, and I mean it. Every one of them said, it can't be me. I'm not in that category. And believe me, you are, and I'm sure that that humbleness is exactly what's put you into this category. Vin Milley, we want to say thank you for decades of support for our Cambridge young people in every possible sport, in every possible area of the city. Vin Milley, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Anthony, and like Kenny, there's a lot of people that I'd like to thank. I didn't prepare a list today, but I'd like to start with thanking Anthony and his committee, the Galluccio Associates, for all that they do for all the youth in Cambridge. I'd also like to thank all the great people at Cambridge Youth Hockey and North Cambridge Little League Baseball, who I was very fortunate to have a small part in working with them. There's another person here that I know he's been up on the stage, and many people have mentioned him, but Mr. Paul Ryder, who really, if you think about it, he touches every single youth sports organization in the city of Cambridge, because everybody has to go through Paul to get either, gymnasiums or fields or this or that. Paul, thank you so much for all your help and all your support over the years, because, without Paul, Shoot Straight in Cambridge definitely would not have lasted the 20-some odd years that we've been fortunate enough to have it. A couple of other people that I'd like to thank is obviously I'd like to thank my family, my wife Leslie, who's a teacher at the high school, and my two children, Ronaldo and Catherine, for all their support. I'd like to thank probably the two people that really showed me at a very young age the importance of being a volunteer, and that's my parents, and I'm very fortunate to have them here today, and I think that they were the ones that instilled in me just through example, the value of volunteering in their community in North Cambridge and in our church. So thank you, Mom and Dad, for being here. And in closing, just very quickly, I'd like to congratulate all the recipients, today, this year, all the recipients in past years, and also all the people out here that are with us today and the people that can't be with us here today that have such an effect on all the youth throughout the city of Cambridge. And it's definitely true, that little adage that you reap what you sow. And for all the people here and that are not here today throughout the city of Cambridge that reach out and that recognize kids in Cambridge, recognize kids by a handshake, by a smile, by helping them on the playing courts and in the classroom, and all those places that the kids really need to be helped throughout the years. And I think Cambridge is so much better for all of your help and all the help that we're able to give them. So thank you very much. Thank you.
George Alexander, a Babe Ruth legend. This is an award that, and I can say this quite honestly, you are in the top category of why didn't George get an award yet in this organization? And I mean that in all sincerity. You can call it a love-hate, and why people like Tommy Hill, Billy McGaffigan, it goes on, just sort of gravitate to you, George, is a real mystery. But there's this sort of connection that George has with not only players on his own team, but players throughout the league. Every time you'd look up, George would be there. I mean, and I can even remember George used to haunt me about not being able to hit lefties, and I couldn't hit lefties. But you'd always look up, whatever your quirk was or your flaw was, George knew it. Or if you had a strength, George knew it. And after you'd get up to bat or after you made a play in the field, before you even looked at your own coach, you'd be looking over at George, who who was sitting somewhere out in the stands because it was important to you. And George knew, because George had been scouting and watching players since you were probably 9 years old. And I can't think of a time when I haven't gone to an all-star game or a 12-year-old tournament or even a traveling game where George Alexander is not there. And think about this. Babe Ruth coach, senior Babe Ruth coach, JV baseball coach. And think about the number of young people that he faces and interacts with in an average baseball season. And I think George Alexander has been a role model to so many kids because George Alexander is focused on one thing. Aside from his family and his work, it's baseball and it's kids. And this has been going on for decades. George, I have to say to you that many of your critics out there have given much of your credit to the departure of great coaches like Louis DePasquale. But we know, George, that you have been a consistent force in Babe Ruth. And last night, Louis and I went out for Chinese food, and I really, we had a lot of funny things to talk about today. Like, I know all the stories that you're thinking that I might talk about right now, but I said, you know what, Louis, George deserves this today. And George, from me and to all the players out there that were with you, and this is a guy who not only coached, but taking kids to batting cages, taking them to Cooperstown to see the Hall of Fame. George became a friend, and I mean that to the kids that he played with. And believe me, I had the best coaches in the city, and I couldn't be prouder of the George Grenages and Louis that I had. But every kid in the city had a little bit of jealousy for players that coached for George, and I mean that. Going out to dinner and going to the cages, and it was just an interaction that you knew you were going to have for the rest of your life. Like even now, some of his players, you know, they know they'll invite George to their wedding, and George will make an excuse because he doesn't want to wear a hat, and he'll say that his car broke down, and they know that that's a relationship that will go on for a long, long time. George, I had to. I mean, there were two, that made three, so now it's over. You're the last one anyway, so I get that in. But George, honest to God, I don't think there's a bigger baseball legend in Cambridge. And what's greatest about George, and believe me, he works so well with Paul Sullivan. These two at the high school have such a mutual respect for each other. There's so many instances in sports you will see where a varsity coach will blame a JV coach, or a JV coach will blame a varsity coach, and that can happen within individual sports programs too. There's always opportunities for people to try to make themselves look good at other people's expenses. George Alexander's loyalty to the programs that he's been involved in, loyalty to his other coaches, loyalty to the varsity coach, to his other Babe Ruth coaches, kids pick up on that. Kids see that, and they respect that, and they see that that's the way to do business, and that's the way to live their life. And George Alexander, we want to say to you today, thank you, and what's best about it is I know that there's a lot more to come from George Alexander, and you've contributed decades worth of work, but I know there's going to be decades to come, and we are all looking forward to it. George Alexander.
I want to thank some of my fellow speakers here for acknowledging me from the neck up today. I really appreciate that. No count. Andy had called me up a couple of months ago and said he wanted to acknowledge me today with this award, and I thought that was special. I asked Anthony who was going to be on this special day as today, and that made it even more special. I mean, we talk about the Kenny Clarys here and the privilege I've had of coaching all his sons so far. I don't know why he would put up with all that yelling in all these years. He's a glutton for punishment, but he did. But that's been great. Ralph Dunphy. I mean, Ralph Dunphy, I met through softball, what was that, about 40 years ago? And his son tried out for the high school, and I was hoping that some of that athletic ability would not rub off on his son. And it really didn't, because he had a great year for me. So I thank God for that. Steve Buckley, I tell you, I'm going to be nice about this because it's late. I'm the last speaker. And I know you will not invite me back to that annual Steve Buckley game, which I love every year. So I'm not going to go into anything today about that. But it's great that you're here too. Mike Seco, my favorite umpire of all time. Jimmy Etchell, the pleasure of coaching him some years ago. We went to the World Series together. A great player and a great person, no question about it. So having him next to me today was great because he's special. I just want to thank Anthony Galluccio for this award today. It's fantastic what you do for anyone who's dealing with kids, the youth of the city. They're all very special people. Way back when, Mario DePiero, you're out there. Many years ago, 20-something years ago, you gave me a chance to coach in the Big League. You thought something might happen here, something good maybe. You gave me the chance. I thank you for that. And it's worked out great. Lou Pasquale, another great figure. Always been backing me over the years. When I wanted to take over the senior Big League team, he gave me a vote of confidence to do it, and good things happened there from then on, so I appreciate that, Louis. I want to thank my mother, who was the secretary of the Kennedy School for many years. She didn't realize she had to answer so many baseball phone calls. I thank her for that. Person named Georgie Elder, who I started coaching with 20-something years ago on the Tigers. He's not here today, but we worked together. He gave me my first chance to coach with him, and he soon retired after that. I guess he couldn't take me coaching with him that many years. Paul Sullivan, who 11 years ago thought that I might be a good assistant coach to him. I thank him for that. It's been great working with him. The Babe Ruth managers, I want to thank all of them for allowing me to be their president of their league. They're a great bunch of guys, and we work together well. But last, it's the kids. It's the kids that I want to thank, not only for their great ability, and I can't mention names because a lot of them out here today, a lot of them aren't here today, and I don't want to mention going to names because I'll forget someone and I don't want to offend anyone. They certainly know who they are, I would think. But it's the great relationship with the parents, the kids. The trophies are nice, the awards are nice, the titles are nice, but I think we have the classiest kids playing right here in Cambridge in the whole state. I've seen other cities, and I appreciate, I'm up here today because of their great ability to pitch, to field, to hit. Believe that. They are great ball players. But the most important has been great to coach them as kids. They are great human beings. From 22 years ago to the present, the kids I coach now, I will do anything for them. They know that. And as long as it's fun, I'll keep on doing this. But that's the special part, not the wins and losses. It's just being with them and knowing how great they are as people. Anthony, I want to thank you again. It's been a special day.
One more recognition. As it is the tradition here, we received a call from Central Little League this week who had recognized that there was one individual, unfortunately, who had been selected for the All-Star team, was not notified because of a change of address. And at this time, we'd like to recognize that unsung player who was not able to participate in the Central Little League 12-year-old All-Star tournament because of an address change. He is now a softball player at the Cypress Lounge and an excellent athlete. Our unsung hero, James Henry, is here today. Stand up, James, please. Everybody, thank you so much for coming today. Please, I'd love to see you again next year. We can't do it without you. Thanks, and we'll see you at the 5th annual breakfast. Thank you.